Hello and welcome to the show. Today I'm going to be sharing random conversations that I had with Abuja businesswomen. And yes, if you've been following the last 3 or 4 episodes, it's the same event, the one on the 22nd of June, 2023. I hope you're not tired of hearing about it because really we discussed a lot of interesting things during the formal sessions and some also intriguing stuff during the questions and answer and after the event was over and conversations here and there with a few people left, right, all over the place. So the conversations that we had with the Abuja business women and a co-trainer who I've mentioned, Coach Jugo, I'll talk about what her own part in the training was tomorrow, or rather at the next episode. I'm not sure if I can record tomorrow. So the theme was building a bridge to greater sales. And like I've mentioned, the last 3 or 4 episodes have been about that. If this is the first time of listening to the podcast, you like this episode, when you're done, scroll back the last 3, listen to it, get a sense of all the things that we discussed formally there. Because what we're going to talk about here is going to be some Q&A things and some side chat that happened during the training, during the seminar, during the event. So, this episode, those are the sorts of things that we're going to dig into. Now, there are lots of these side conversations. It's going to be hard to make a podcast episode where we can put everything in one concise recording. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a few threads that I can remember based on conversations that I had with individual people, and then we'll tease all the issues out. So first is the Ini conversation, and Ini is a medical doctor. She's into the Medicare business. She owns her own ophthalmology practice. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that well. Well, actually, I'm not sure if she's an ophthalmologist or an optometrist or an opto something. But basically, she owns her own opto thing practice. And they fix our eyeballs. They help us with laser surgery. They help us with contacts. What else? They help us diagnose cataracts. All sorts of things. So anything eye related, and that's what it is that she handles. Sorry, forgive the interruption. I'm making this recording. The kids are at home, so there are going to be interruptions every now and then. So back to the Ini conversation. Yeah, so she is more of a business operator, more of a business owner. She doesn't see clients anymore. Because she has medical doctors who are into the daily operation of the clinic and who see the clients. So her focus now is, sorry, did I say clients? I think patients. Okay, well, for Medicare, I guess it's interchangeable. You're a client or you're a patient. So her focus now is business development and managing the business. The name of the clinic is Magna Eye Care. Magna, that's Magna. Magna Eye Care. So Google them, follow them on socials if you're interested in supporting female-owned enterprises. So one of the questions that we tackled with Ini, remember, I was having multiple conversations with people during and after the event. So this is not a summary of everything that Ini and I discussed. Just a couple of things that I thought would be nice to share with the community over here. So one of the questions that we tackled is how we influence people to make our stuff a priority for them. So if you sell Italian bags, how can you influence people to make your Italian bags a priority for them? Because the average person, apart from people who are shoe and bag aficionados, don't just wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to buy authentic leather bags today, or I'm going to buy authentic leather shoes today. But in her own unique context, the problem was, at least in this part of the world, in Nigeria anyway. Okay, let me not make a blanket statement about Nigeria. Let's say in Abuja. And in Lagos. Okay, I can speak for Abuja and Lagos. So in this part of the world, in Abuja and Lagos, in this small part of Nigeria, people only care for eye doctors when things have already fallen apart. We only go to see the eye doctor, not just the eye doctors, but also, what do you call these guys? The mouth doctors, teeth doctors, dentists. Basically, we don't show up to these people unless things have fallen apart. I've cracked a tooth. My tooth is rotten. There are maggots coming out of my teeth. My right eye is going blind. Or I can't watch TV clearly, or I'm having problems with driving. So that's when people show up to Magna Eye Care and other opto eye care, healthcare practitioners in this part of the world. So how can we influence them to take routine things important and then make it a part of their habits? So that was our question. Now, my response was something I had already reiterated during the networking session, the training session. I've said it on the podcast, and I'm going to say it here again in case there are people who have this idea. You can't really force or influence anyone to do anything. You can't. Well, if you put a gun to their head, yes. Or if you give them a huge sum of money, then yes. But outside of these extreme circumstances where we're bribing or cajoling or browbeating people or things like that, we can't really force or influence people to do anything. The best we can do is try and figure out what their motivations are, see how those motivations and intentions align with ours, and then make a persuasive case the best you can. That is all that you can do. So there's no way to get people to take up routine eye care that they do not think is important. If they don't think it's important, then they're not going to take up a routine eye care. Yes, there's been some research that has shown how the the dental industry, people who make toothpaste and toothbrushes, how they were able to put trigger elements there to trigger habits and things like that. But that is beyond the scope of this podcast. I'm talking about one-on-one situations. I'm here, I'm talking to you. I really can't force or influence you to do anything. Or she's there, she's talking to a client, a patient, a patron, whatever it is you call them in the medical space. You can't really force or influence someone to do what it is that they don't want. Now, however, there are conversation techniques when you're faced with one patient, one potential customer, to help them to try and figure out if they have a big enough problem worth solving. Because it's possible that someone has a big problem, they just don't know it's a big problem. So somebody might think, my tooth is cracked. It's not that big of a deal. So there are conversations that you can have as a mouth doctor, as a dentist, as a whatever you call yourselves, people who deal with that part of the body. There are conversations that you can have to get the person to see that, look, this cracked tooth is not as small as you think. Cracked tooth, space for food, bacteria. Food, bacteria leads to infections. Infections create toxins. Toxins can seep into the bloodstream. And next thing you're faced with septicemia. Septicemia can kill. So there are ways that you can have those conversations to show that this cracked tooth, yes, it doesn't look like it's a problem. Your father had a cracked tooth. Your grandfather had a cracked tooth. Your great-grandfather had a cracked tooth. But this thing can lead to death. So there are ways of having these conversations, and I ran the ladies through how we achieve these sorts of things. Now remember, I said we can't force or influence people. This is not really forcing or influencing. This is just trying to open up somebody's eyes to show them that, look, this thing that you think is child's play isn't really child's play. This is a big deal, and I think you should pay attention to it. And this is how you go about it. So it's also a conversation framework, because a lot of the things we talk about over here on the podcast during the live training, and if I handle any trainings for your organization, you have me in to come and talk to your college association, or you want me to talk to your employees to help them to sell better. It's all going to be about conversation frameworks. So the conversation framework that we're going to use in these kinds of situations is called SPIN. SPIN is an acronym, SPIN. It's developed from the research of a fellow called Neil Rackham. He had a book called Spin Selling, either in the 70s or in the 80s. I can't remember when, but I know it's not 60s, and I know it's not 90s. So it's between 70s and 80s. And so SPIN is an acronym for different kinds of questions that you should be asking potential clients. Remember, on the podcast, or whenever I show up at your training sessions live, we're going to be talking about conversation frameworks. So conversation frameworks are going to be question-led. I ask a question, I listen, the person says something, I respond, and then that's how the conversation flows. So it's not an interrogation, it's a question-led process. So S stands for situation questions. You're going to be asking questions to try and understand the situation, basically. Asking questions to figure out what the problem is and how they got there. So this is the part where the example that we used when we were having the conversation with Ini was an old man who needs cataract surgery, but he doesn't think he needs cataract surgery. So these are the kinds of questions early on where, we've all been to doctors, so kind of questions that doctors ask. So what's the problem, sir? How long have you had difficulty with reading? How long have you had difficulty with driving? How long have you had difficulty with this and that? And then you're also going to ask questions to see if occupational hazards exist, because there are some people that are prone to certain kinds of diseases. So photographers sit with computers for a very long time. Computers for a very long time. Old school photographers who stay in the dark room for a very long time. Computer people looking at computers for a very long time, software developers, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not an eye professional, but I'm assuming that maybe there are some risks that photographers, computer developers, software developers, these sorts of people have that maybe bricklayers don't have. Because I'm guessing for bricklayers and laborers, if they have any issues with their eyes, it's probably because a hammer drops on the head and maybe damages an eye nerve, or maybe they get into a fight and one guy punches another guy's eyes. So it's probably going to be trauma. But for photographers, computer and software developers, coders, those sorts of things, I'm sure they have some eye issues. So situation questions are going to be you asking all these things because you're trying to understand what's the situation here, how did we get to where we are. Now the P is for problem questions. And this is questions that we use to try and figure out how the problem makes the potential customer, or the patient in this case, how it makes them feel. So are you frustrated that you can't drive anymore? Or it must be frustrating trying to supervise your business with poor eyesight. What issues are these cataracts or this blah 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 causing you to have in your daily life? You need to ask these questions. Now it's not out of place because when we go to see our regular doctors and it's a question of malaria or typhoid or something, these are the questions that they ask us. How many times are you going to the toilet? What does your poop look like? Oh, sorry, that must be really difficult, isn't it? Oh, so you mean you've been waking up 4 times every night to go and pee? Oh, okay. Then while they're talking, they're making their notes. That's just part of the consultative process that medical doctors go through. And it's also the kind of consultative process that all of us should be going through, no matter the business that we're involved in. Even if we sell fancy Italian leather bags, or if we sell, I don't know, architecture services, or we sell chickens, or whatever. So problem questions. We're trying to figure out how the problem makes the person feel. Implication questions. That is where we're going to dig in, and we're going to use quantifiable terms to show the person how much they are suffering. So in the early thing where I spoke about a cracked tooth, this is the part of the question where the dentist is asking questions to get a sense of how many hours this person is having the headache or whatever because of the cracked tooth. So that's where you're going to bring it up that the person is spending, that because of this small thing, you're spending 4 hours every day in intense headaches. And that's where you also talk about the statistics of how many percentage of people develop septicemia and die in Nigeria and blah, 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 blah. So we're trying to get into quantifiable terms. We're trying to get down to numbers as much as possible so we can quantify the suffering. So this is the part where you're asking Baba. Remember, in the scenario that we used in the conversation with Ini, we're talking about an old man who really needs cataracts, but he doesn't think it's his problem. He doesn't think it's a big problem. So that's about where you dig in. Because you've been asking all the questions about the situation and the problem, that's where you dig in and you point out that because of these cataracts, and because he has had to hire a driver and a PA, he is now spending an extra 80,000 naira a month. So maybe 50,000 for the PA, 30,000 for the driver. So that's the part where you point it out. And this is also where you dig into the fact that he's spending half the time at work trying to verify the standards that the employees are producing. In the example that we gave, we just assumed that Baba has a farm that he works on. Because it's typical in this part of the world anyway. You retire, you go back to the village, you set up a farm. It's just what some people do. Nigerians are entrepreneurial. We all engage in businesses, whether early in our life or whether in the later years. So we're just assuming that Baba has retired, he's back in the village, and that's it. So he's spending time, half the time, trying to verify standards and to verify stuff that is going on. Because if Baba has cataracts and he's going a little, let's not say blind, let's say his vision is impaired, you best believe that people are trying to sneak and steal an extra chicken or steal some eggs or steal some yam every now and then. So he's spending half his time trying to verify that everything is going according to plan. So this is the part of the conversation where you're pointing out these things. He's spending 80K per month that he doesn't need to spend, and he's spending half his time supervising, verifying, and those sorts of things. Now the N is for need or payoff questions. Now, this is where we ask questions or we try to show the potential clients the results that they will get if they go ahead with the solution. This is where we're going to point out to Baba that, look, if we go ahead and do this cataract thing, you're going to save 1 million naira a year. And Baba is going to say, how? 1 million naira a year, how? 1 million naira, Bawo. And you point out that, Baba, you're already paying 80K a month. You know that 80K a month is 960K. And 960K, that doesn't include the times when you give a tip, or maybe, it's time for Salah, so you give some extra money and stuff like that. So easily, Baba is paying ₦1 million a year, and he just doesn't realize that. This is the point where you point it out. And you also point out that if you can cut down, if we do these cataract things, then instead of supervising 4 hours a day, he can cut down supervising to 2 hours a day. He'll be able to free out 2 more hours of his schedule, because he can now readily look at things. Now, for those of you who've listened to the last 2-3 podcast episodes, these are the kinds of questions that we're asking during the discovery stage that we mentioned. That's what we're trying to figure out. Does the client have a problem that is worth solving? That's the main question that we're trying to solve. So, the reason why we're asking all these questions and we're going through spin and all that is because if this guy, if this daddy, if this madam, if this mommy, if this whoever if they don't think they have a problem worth solving, they're not going to do anything about it, and there's nothing that you can do. Because, for instance, if Baba is okay with the 1 million that he's paying for extra salaries, if he's fine with it, he's fine with it. I'm paying 1 million a year, and so it's no big deal. If he doesn't think it's a big deal, it's not a big deal. And then, if he also says, no problem, my grandchildren are going to be home for the holidays, they can help me with supervising, I trust their oversight, and I'm getting some new hires. I'm hiring my cousin in the village, I trust him, so he can do the oversight. If that's really what Baba thinks, 1 million is nothing. My children will be here, they will help me supervise, I'm going to hire my cousin. There's absolutely nothing you can do. If Baba is uncomfortable with putting needles into his eyes for glaucoma surgery, or firing lasers into his eyeballs to correct glaucoma or whatever, there's nothing you can do. Because some people say, well, yes, I'm spending this extra money, but don't worry, I have the help. And then plus, I'm 60 or I'm 70, I'm going to be dead in 10, 20 years. What's the big deal? So in that case, there's absolutely nothing you can do. The best thing you can do is to keep him in a relationship nurturing sequence. That is where, you're sending emails or messages or calling once in a while, just so that you're top of mind in case he changes his mind and he's ready to move ahead. You'll be the first person that he remembers. So those are some of the issues that we discussed with the INI conversation. A summary: you can't force anybody to do anything, but yes, there are conversation frameworks where you can point out to someone that, look, this thing you're dealing with, it looks like it's chicken, it looks like it's child's play, but actually it's a big issue. And to do that, we're going to be using the spin technique. Now, let's see. Okay, then there was also the Ori conversation. She was a member of the cohort. She's involved in the fashion industry, but she's involved in the back end of the value chain. So, in other words, you go and meet your favorite designer and they design something beautiful for you, a beautiful dress, a beautiful suit. And they understand the concept, they show you the designs, you're happy. Now, where Ori fits into the value chain is she is the one who has the tailors or the technicians, because, there are technicians that help with the embroidery, where you put all the stones and things like that, all the fancy stuff. So she has the tailors and the technicians who make those designs become a reality. And so because of that, she might not have a brand of her own, but she's working with multiple fashion and tailoring outlets over the city. So her question was, how do you decide if you have a good business idea before you throw money in? What she wanted to know was, how do you know if you have a bad business idea that might not work in Nigeria? Because there's some business ideas that are culture specific, location specific, blah, 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 stuff like that. So my answer to the question was, there's a process called market validation. For those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while, you're already familiar with it. For those of you who are newbies, this is your first time listening to the show, or you've listened to 1 or 2 episodes, let's just go over, reintroduce you to the concept, or rather introduce you to the concept. So the process is called market validation. Before you begin, first of all, market validation involves sales motions in the market. In other words, it means you're going to have to do some stuff as if you're trying to sell, because you have to explore that, because you're looking for the market to show you signs that this is a good idea, giving you signs of demand, and then that is when you can go ahead. Now, to flesh it out, let me give the example that she gave. The example she gave was this: Nigerians don't eat shark meat. Now, that's a questionable idea, because I don't like to eat seafood. But I remember when I was a little boy, my mom went to Plateau State and she found some she went to Plateau State and then she found some shark meat in the market, and she brought it home. She cooked it, and it didn't seem bad at all. So I haven't kept up with the shark meat market in Nigeria, but I'm assuming that there are Nigerians who like shark cuisine. But for now, let's go with our premise that Nigerians don't eat shark meat. and you want to know if it's a good idea to start the shark meat business. I don't know if that's what she wants to do, start a shark meat business, but anyway, that's a good enough example. So market validation in this case is going to start with a hunch, because everybody always has a hunch before you start your business. So let's say that the assumption was that Onitsha boys or Lagos boys like to spend money in fish joints. For those of us who live in the big cities, even in Abuja, there are beer parlors all over the place, and it's something that people do take off steam. You show up on the Friday night, you and the boys, you have a couple of beers, you have some bushmeat, you have some catfish, stuff like that. So the assumption is that Onitsha boys and Lagos boys, that's where all the action is. They like to spend their money in fish joints. Then, instead of importing a whole container of shark and spending millions of naira on this business from the get-go, you can spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, and you can buy a small batch and then send them to fish operators in Onitsha or in Lagos. Women who have these beer salons, sorry, not beer salons, what are they called? Beer parlors, bushmeat hotspots, things like that. Send it to these operators. You can send it to them for free or maybe for a small fee, but in exchange, you just want them to tell you something. You just want them to let you know, is this shark meat moving? Do boys like shark fish pepper soup? Do they like roasted fish, roasted shark fin soup? Blah, 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 is the intel that you need. So you spend some thousands or some hundreds of thousands, you send it to these women, and then after a while, they're going to give you the feedback. If nobody's buying, they'll let you know. They'll let you know that, well, this thing tastes good, but boys are not buying this thing. They're not picking it up. And maybe then you come with another hunch. You now know whether you might try another market segment, because I'm talking about beer parlors. So these are, what should I say, semi-unregulated businesses, because they're there in the park corner, things like that. So maybe the local council regulates them, but it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal like the big restaurants or fast food joints. So if nobody's buying, then now you know that maybe it's time to try another market segment. So instead of using roadside fish joints, maybe you try upscale restaurants. But the thing is this, from spending this tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, eventually you're going to start getting market signals, whether bar patrons like the meat, whether restaurant patrons like the meat, or, well, I can't think of any other person. Or, maybe people just prefer to stick to catfish pepper soup, which is trending now and which has been around for quite a while. But the bottom line is this, interactions with other stakeholders in the business you're going to be interacting with: the market women, the bar owners, the chefs, the club promoters, etc. That's going to give you a sense of which experiment to run next. And you'll be able to get a sense of whether there's market demand before you throw more money in. The problem is most Nigerians like to go all in. You think shark is going to be the way forward, and so you pump your whole retirement savings into it. This shark thing must work. So don't go all in. Market validation first. Have a hunch, test it out, do some sales activity. You're going to get some signals from the market whether this is a good idea or not. So essentially, market validation is how much small sales can you get, how much demand can you get, and we're not focusing on what people promise you or what people say. You can ask market women in Onitsha and she will say that, the shark tastes really nice, this thing is going to sell, it's a good idea, and then you pump all your money in. It's not about what people say, it's about what people do with their wallets, with their money. So you give it to the woman and her patrons buy it up in 3 or 4 days, and you know that, okay, I might have something here. And you roll off a smaller amount, some more money, and then you give it a go. So, okay, since we're already past the 20-minute mark, okay, let me just go into another one that got everyone real enthralled. And that was the general conversation among skincare entrepreneurs in the house. And it was this whole thing of dancing on social media to promote your business. Is dancing on social media effective? Specifically, Instagram Reels and TikTok. Should we engage in those sorts of things? Now, I'm not going to go into any details because we're heading towards 30 minutes. But this is the general consensus that we arrived in. I think it's exciting enough for you guys to get the hint. So, this is some of the consensus that we arrived at. Okay, so we agree that dancing, sexy dancing, flirty, engaging content, trendy stuff, challenges, we all agree it will bring in a crowd of people to your social media. That's a fact. We can't deny that. Well, the problem is the people that it's going to bring in Are they the right kind of audience? Are they the people who could end up becoming buyers? Those were the kinds of conversations that we're having. So yes, by doing all this stuff, you might trend, you might blow, you might have 1,000 visits, 10,000 visits, 900,000 visits, whatever to your videos. But that was the hanging question at the end of the day. Is this the right kind of audience that are going to end up becoming potential buyers? Now, the case in point was people who do sexy TikTok and Instagram reels, with bum shorts and bra straps and stuff like that, viral videos of twerking and things. So that's millions of followers. You see them do that, it's millions of followers, you think it's a good idea, you try and do that, but then you forget that there are other aspects to it. And sometimes the reason why these people are twerking and grinding and everything is because it works for their particular sort of business. The example that I gave was, I can't remember the lady's name, but once I called her, once I described it, some of the ladies there knew who I was talking about. There's a lady, African American lady, who slim, cute looking, bomb shorts and that sort of thing, twerking, grinding, those sorts of things. Once I mentioned, they knew who the lady was. And then I pointed out to the girls that, I've always been very curious that what's the point? I mean, people don't just get up and grind and twist and flirt and, do that every single day. I mean, there are some people who are looking for affirmation. That's a psychological thing. That's beside the point. But I just assume that there has to be a commercial angle to this, or else people can't just be twerking for no reason. So, and I pointed out to them that for this particular influencer, she has shoe boxes and she has sneakers in the background. And from reading the comments under her videos, it became clear that that is actually her play. So she does these things. Lots of men watch the videos. But among the men that watch her videos are sneakerheads. Sneakerheads love the greatest sneakers, the greatest gear, the greatest kicks, the greatest whatever. She has those things in the background. So there's some people that will slide up in her DM because they want to date her and they want her phone number. But then there are also people who are going to be like, oh, you have those Nike Jordans, blah, blah, blah. How much? You see? So that was an interesting case to show that for some people, it's bringing in lots of crowds. For them, it's the right crowd. But for you, the beauty influencer, does that mean that it's going to be the right crowd that is going to come to your social media handles? And then another set of questions that we looked at was, are you interested in dancing? Do you have the talent for producing this kind of content? If the answer is no, then all this dancing and pointing and all the challenges and all whatnot, you can't do that sustainably over time because you don't have the talent, you don't have the interest, you're going to be tired. Business growth requires that we do these things for months and years to grow a business. If you don't have the power, in quote, as we say in Nigeria, if you don't have the power to chase social media trends for your business and to dance and to point and to whine and things like that, you just go viral on one video, it's not going to change your business life. It's not going to give you the money that you need. You need to produce this kind of entertaining content for the long haul for this to work. This lady that I spoke about, I think her name is Becky, the one that sells shoes. You check and scroll and scroll and scroll. Becky has been dancing, grinding, social media challenge, whatever. She's been doing this for over a year. If you're not interested in these sorts of things, if you're not a dancer, you don't like dancing, you don't have the interest, you're not going to be able to dance every single day, every single week for the whole year. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. So, my challenge to them, and my challenge to you, for those of you who are debating this whole dancing and pointing and challenges thing, is this. Have you learned the techniques from these sexy and engaging TikTok dancers and influencers? There's something deliberate about what they're doing. There's a sales funnel that they're using. There are sales techniques that they're trying to do. So dancing and pointing influencers are not dancing or twerking at random. There's a business framework to it. If you want to pursue this thing, then go on apprentice from these people. Learn from them. Learn the whole system. It's not just about the dance. Dancing, twerking, pointing without having other parts of the system in place is going to lead to you wasting your time. So the sexy TikTok dancer with the shoes in the background, apart from the dance technique, whether she's doing butterfly dance or grinding dance or whatever it is, there are also merchandising decisions that she's making, and she's following fashion trends. Are Air Jordans raining right now? Is Adidas raining right now? What is it that is raining right now? What it is that is moving market? There are merchandising decisions that are going into what she shows in her video. Then there's also engagement in the DMs, because with thousands of followers will come hundreds of messages. There has to be engagement in the DM to try and tease out the orders, people who want to buy shoe, from those boys who are just horny, who are saying, hey, how far? I want to date you. What's your phone number? So you have to engage in the DM. That's another part of it. How do you separate the weirdos from people who want to buy shoes? Then there's also product fulfillment, payment verification. That is, who has paid, where are we sending the shoes to, those sorts of things. And then there's also relationship building that is involved, because definitely I suspect that this Becky lady who is grinding has an email list that she has to manage. People that have bought shoes from her, and maybe other shoes communities that she's been introduced to, because folks have bought from her. Because nobody can twerk forever, nobody can grind forever. So I'm sure she's building up her email list, so that when these things pass, when she's too old or when she's too whatever, she's going to be able to continue her shoe sales by using the email list. Sorry. So if you show up and you dance, but you don't do all these other functions, in this case, merchandising, knowing fashion trends, engagement, product fulfillment, payment verification, relationship building, managing your email list, if you don't do all that, then, as we say in Nigeria, you're going to miss road. You will be sorely disappointed. So it's not just about the dancing, and it's not just about the attention that comes from these kind of entertaining content. So overall, it was a wonderful experience. There were too many side conversations with too many wonderful, disciplined, and ambitious women. We can't share it all. I can't give you all the discussions and all the insights on this podcast. So the solution is this. Follow Brunch and Bond on their socials and Instagram handles. On Instagram is Brunch and Bond, together as one word. So brunch, that's the meal between breakfast and lunch, and then bond, as in when people get together and bond. Or you can show up to their live events. You can also show up at my speaking engagements if you follow me on socials and you know I'm going to be in your own part of town. This one was only a 25,000 Naira event, and look at the amount of business deliberations that we had. Because we've done, I think, 4 podcast summary episodes so far, and still we can't cover exactly all the things that we went into. So if you love what you hear on the podcast and you would like daily access to me, so that you can ask me directly questions related to how you sell in your business, and if you want help with building relationship with your customers and other business stakeholders, I'm going to be relaunching my paid WhatsApp community in a few days. The investment required is only 5,000 Naira a month. 5,000 Naira, a Naira, that's a Nigerian currency. Then you get to ask me anything, and I'll give you answers and assignments to move your business forward, because it doesn't profit you if I give you answers, but I don't make sure that you're following up on the good advice that I'm giving. So if you're interested in this, then hit me up on social media, DM me, let me know that you're interested, hit me up in the inbox. Those of you who are listening from America, because I think right now over half of you are in the US of A, folks in other part of the world, you're still interested, hit me up and let's see what we can work out. In this beautiful world of interconnectedness, we can always work out something when it comes to international payments. So that's all for today. Remember, subscribing to the show is free. You don't have to pay any money. The name of this show is Sales for the Nigerian Business Person Podcast. It's confirmed and available on Spotify, on Google Podcast, Apple iTunes, Pocket Cast, and Overcast. Remember, connect with me on the socials, especially on LinkedIn, where I hang out every single day. That's my social media of choice. My name is Tavishima Ayede. If you want the correct spelling of the name and you want my email address, then just check the podcast player or the web player where you're listening to for this episode. If you just hit the return button, you'll see it there. My face, the spelling of my name, my email address. So hit me up on socials. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next episode.